It's a phrase we hear over and over on Twitter whenever someone criticizes morally troubling anti-leftist tactics used by members of the right. They say, "What are you, some sort of coward? What are you worried about? My principles?" The phrase is meant to deride the supposed moral preening of those who criticize. They must think themselves high and mighty, whining about virtue where some good hard-nosed old-fashioned get in the dirt and fight 'em tactics would do. These worries about the right and wrong just hamstring the right. My principles are a liability. Why can't those weaklings just get over their supposed moral purity and fight in the trenches? Now, I am no fan of political cowardice. I wrote an entire book called Bullies, in which I blasted the left's character assassination techniques. I routinely speak on college campuses in conditions that are less than physically secure. I am more than happy to tell people things they don't want to hear in political debate, and I've been threatened more than once on national television, by the way, for my trouble. But I am also a fan of principles. I'm a fan of principles because without them, politics becomes meaningless. Even those who criticize my principles have their own principles. The my principles crowd's highest principle is supposedly defeating the left. That's the entire argument. If you stick with your wishy-washy principles about civility, you'll lose. And if you lose, my principles will be destroyed. But as it turns out, many of the people who mock my principles have no actual principles other than empty tribal victory. Never was that clearer than this week when several members of the self-appointed Trump Ardent Defense Squad went full social justice warrior, invading a Shakespeare in the Park performance of Julius Caesar that depicts President Trump as Caesar. Screaming liberal hate kills, they stormed the stage, called the audience member Joseph Goebbels, and held up the production. Those who objected to this obtuse behavior were simply being hamstrung by my principles, they then proclaimed. Except that there were no principles at stake here. What was the supposed principle? Perhaps the principle was that artists shouldn't make art that invokes images of violence inflicted on a president. Then why weren't they upset about a rodeo clown dressed up as President Obama in 2013? Maybe the principle was that radical rhetoric leads to violence. Then why weren't they upset when candidate Trump urged his followers to clock protesters? Maybe the principle was that shutting down others' free speech is bad, a sort of ironic lesson for the left. Then why didn't they say so, rather than claiming that the content of the play justified their shutdown? And why would this be a good strategy, given that the self-immolating hard left's free speech shutdowns have backfired so dramatically that even Obama and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have been forced to condemn them? No, there were no principles here other than tribalistic anti-left foolishness. Unfortunately, that seems to be the order of the day for a few select on the right. I'm old enough to remember when the pro-Trump right justified Trump's behavior on the grounds that he had to build a wall and rescind Obama's executive amnesty. Now, only Ann Coulter has the guts to point out that Trump hasn't done either of those things and that he just enshrined for all time Obama's executive amnesty. I'm old enough to remember when the pro-Trump right assured conservatives that it would hold Trump to account if he were to fail to repeal Obamacare. Now it's ignoring the fact that he called a watered-down Obamacare too mean and pushed for broader funding. What are the principles? I thought my principles had to go so that they could achieve their principles, but they seem rather blithe about the collapse of some of their supposed core precepts, which suggests that maybe there are some on the right who just want to fight, and they've forgotten why they fight and even how to fight. All that matters now is winning, even if they have no idea what winning looks like other than the other guy losing. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Okay, lots to talk about today. I'm going to talk about, at length, the Ossoff loss, which is just hilarious. I have been all evening. Last night I was laughing my ass off. It was just spectacular. The good news is that he will at least have a soft landing. He's probably going to end up, I think, as a rotating co-host on Pod Save America, because that's probably the only place he can go from here. But before we get to any of that, and there's a lot to talk about, it is a vindication for President Trump just because the left turned it into a referendum on Trump when it really did not have to be. But before we get to any of that, first I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Helix Sleep. So, I don't get a lot of sleep, which means that the sleep that I do get, I need it to be I need to be fast asleep, I need to be comfortable. I really need to get my quality sleep since I can't get quantity sleep due to the 2 kids in my house under age 4. Well, that's where Helix Sleep comes in. Helix Sleep mattress is the most comfortable mattress in America for my money. HelixSleep.com/Ben. The way that it works is you go on their site, ask you a bunch of questions about, do you like to sleep on your side or your back? How much do you weigh? What's your body type? Do you like the mattress to be breathable? Do you like it to absorb heat? How do you want the mattress to be? And then they send it to you in the mail. You can actually have a mattress that has 2 separate settings for you and your spouse. Then they send it to you in the mail, and you open the box, and it inflates right in front of you because it's a foam mattress, and then you just put it on your bed, and you're good to go. And you can try it out for 100 nights. And if you don't like it, you can send it back for free. They will come pick it up. They'll give you a 100% refund, no questions asked. You won't have to do it because the mattress is super duper comfortable. So go to helixsleep.com/Ben and get $50 off your order. That's helixsleep.com/Ben. Get $50 off your order right now. helixsleep.com/Ben. Use that /Ben so that they know that we sent you as well. Get that $50 off. That keeps them advertising with us so that we can continue to bring you the show. Okay, so last night, Jon Ossoff loses by 5 points to Karen Handel in the Georgia 6th. The Democrats had poured $30 million into this ridiculous race. Now, it is important to note, the reason that they thought they were going to win this race is because Hillary Clinton only lost to Donald Trump in this district by 1 point in 2016. The reason that this was somewhat delusional is because Tom Price, who was the congressperson who just left to join the Trump administration as Secretary of Health and Human Services, he had won the district in the same election cycle by 23 points. In other words, there are a lot of Republicans in the district who aren't fond of President Trump, but who also aren't going to vote for a Democrat just because they don't like President Trump. Trump wasn't on the ballot last night. Karen Handel was on the ballot. They kind of like Karen Handel. They certainly like Karen Handel a lot more than they like Jon Ossoff. And the Democrats' attempts to turn everything into a referendum on Trump really backfired against them in a significant way last night. Again, they dumped tons of outside the district money in. Jon Ossoff looks like they found the one man in America who's nerdier than I am, and they ran him for Congress. And then they ran him from a district that wasn't even the Georgia 6th. But I think it's important to look at how the media played this race, because it really played into why the Democrats lost here. The reason the Democrats lost is because the media ran a race that the voters in the district were not interested in running. They were all jazzed because back in April, Ossoff won 48% of the vote, 49% of the vote. That's because 1,000 Republicans were running, and so Democrats were able to consolidate their vote, and nobody paid attention to the special election because it was assumed that Republicans were going to win it until Ossoff came very close to winning in the first round. Then in the runoff, Republicans actually showed up to vote. That's kind of the short story. But Democrats were claiming from the very beginning that this race was going to be a referendum on Trump. Is Trump doing a good job or a bad job? He's doing a crappy job. He's a Russian spy, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, Jon Ossoff is definitely going to win some random district in the middle of suburban Georgia. So here is CNN covering the race. This is right after the original round in which Ossoff missed winning 50%.
Ossoff will face off against Republican Karen Handel in June for the seat formerly held by Trump's health secretary, Tom Price, in a contest seen as a referendum on Trump's presidency and a preview of next year's midterm elections. President Trump taking credit for the results, hailing the runoff as a win despite Ossoff's strong showing, tweeting, "Despite major outside money, fake media support, and 11 Republican candidates, big R win with runoff in Georgia. Glad to be of help." The president was personally invested in the election, bashing the Democratic contender in a barrage of tweets and even recording a robocall to urge Republicans to get out and vote.
Ossoff will raise your taxes, destroy your health care, and flood our country with illegal immigrants.
President Trump beat Hillary Clinton in this Republican stronghold by just 1% last November.
Okay, so you can see that CNN, the rest of the media, they wanted to play this as it's all about Trump. It's all about Trump. Now, the reality is in the district, Trump is not particularly popular. Mitt Romney won this district in 2012 by 23 points, the same margin of victory for Tom Price in that same election cycle. So Trump is not that popular, and so the Democrats thought, okay, Trump is investing himself here, and that's why it's very, very important that he's going to lose. And you can see that the fallout from that was really funny last night because CNN, which had played this whole thing up as it's going to be a referendum on Trump, Trump's going to lose this, and then everyone's going to realize how toxic he is, and then he's going to lose 100 seats and the House in 2018. A little early to say that. You know, last night on CNN, this is going around because it's very, very funny. You can see the media reactions on CNN. This is the actual footage last night on CNN. All the Democrats looking like they want to die. This is the second funniest thing I've seen in the last year. The first funniest thing, of course, was election night when it looked like the entire Democratic Party was going to reenact the last scene from Reservoir Dogs. Anyway, here it was on CNN last night.
To David's point earlier about Democrats and Gloria about looking inward and trying to figure out how to run in the Trump era, this was supposed to be the district that they could have done that because it is wealthy, it is educated, and the kind of voters who are in this district were supposed to be the kind that Democrats could pick off from the Republican. If the Republican ends up winning, it throws the whole Democratic strategy into kind of up in the air, and they kind of have to figure it out all over again.
All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll have more with all.
And this picture was the one that was making the rounds last night, because you can see all of the Democrats on set looking like they're just contemplating life's meaninglessness, that life doesn't mean anything, and then you die and spend all eternity just moldering in the ground, not a thought in your head because you're dead. It's like they just realized about nihilism. And so it's just, I love this shot so it is pretty spectacular stuff. I love it. I love it. So the Democrats made a bunch of mistakes here. I'm going to talk about all the Democratic mistakes here, because we've talked a lot about the failings of the Republican Party, because the Republican Party is the governing party right now. They have a majority in the House, they have a majority in the Senate, they have the presidency, and they're not getting a lot done. But the nice thing for Republicans, the Democrats are awful at everything. They are awful at everything. And so there are a bunch of sort of hot takes from the left that are worth discussing, plus the real reasons why they actually lost this election. So before we get to anything else with regard to why they lost this election, I think that it is important to state that the real reason that the Democrats lost this election is because they have a perverse notion of how these elections work. They do not work because they're going to somehow convince Trump-unfriendly Republicans to flip and vote Democrat. That's not even what happened in 2016. It wasn't a bunch of Democrats who were unhappy with Barack Obama who flipped to Trump so much as it was a turnout game. The fact is the entire margin of victory in a lot of the swing states was lower turnout by Democrats in those swing states by percentages, particularly in the black community. And what happened in Georgia 6th is Democrats really needed high Democratic turnout and low Republican turnout by nationalizing the race, by giving it tons of publicity. Instead, what they ended up doing was driving Republican turnout up. They elevated Republican turnout. And by elevating Republican turnout, they ended up losing. Because here's the reality, folks. A bunch of people who reluctantly voted for Trump, which he won the district by one, a bunch of people who reluctantly voted for Trump are not going to start voting for people who back Nancy Pelosi. Just because you went in and you voted for Tom Price but not Trump does not mean now you're going to flip and vote for Jon Ossoff. That's idiocy. And for Democrats to think that is really stupid. This is why to make the whole thing about Trump is really, really dumb. For a marginal vote, maybe that matters, but what this is really about is motivating your base. The Democrats made the mistake of using Trump to motivate their base, but at the same time, they castigated Republican voters who voted for Trump by talking about Trump Russia, and Trump's corrupt, and Trump's evil. Well, let's say that you're a voter in Georgia 6th, or in Ohio, or Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin, or Michigan, and let's say that you voted for Trump. You held your nose, right? You weren't in love with Trump. You're like a lot of voters in GA6. You didn't love Trump. You thought he's better than Hillary, but, I'm really uncomfortable with this. And you pulled the lever for him. And now the Democrats spend the next 8 months saying that Donald Trump is the most evil person in the world. Give power to Nancy Pelosi. How many of those people do you think are going to flip? The answer, of course, is zero. None of those people are going to flip. And in fact, it's going to drive you to the polls because you hate Nancy Pelosi is actually less popular than Donald Trump. Her current approval rating is 29% nationally. Okay, she's 10 points below Trump. And Trump's in bad shape. So, again, the Democrats made a very large boo-boo when they started targeting these, what they called Republican swing voters, instead of trying to drive out their own base. It's exactly the same mistake, actually, that they made in 2016 when they started targeting Republican swing voters in Michigan, as opposed to trying to drive out their own base. So, a couple of things. Number one, Ossoff's chances in this district were inflated from the outset. This was a congressional race, not a race about Trump. Not a race about Trump. The same year that Trump won by 1, Tom Price won by 23 points. Second, Democrats nationalized this race with outside money. So by pouring money in from California, Ossoff received more money from California than from Georgia in this race. He spent $30 million, and now he's complaining about money in politics, which is just hysterically funny. By doing that, they ended up destroying their own the credibility of their own candidate. What they really needed to do was keep this race under the radar. That's actually what happened in the South Carolina district. There's another special election that happened yesterday. Mick Mulvaney, who is now the director of the Office of Management and Budget, Mick Mulvaney's old district, there was an election yesterday, the South Carolina 5th District, and the Republican only ends up winning by 3. Mick Mulvaney won by 21, and Trump won by 18 in that district. So the idea that was a really close race should scare Republicans. South Carolina 5 should scare Republicans. What Republicans should hope is that Democrats continue to nationalize every race, continue to elevate every race, because that is polarizing to Republicans, and Republicans will then turn out. In South Carolina 5, nobody even knew it was happening, and Democrats almost were able to sneak in and steal a victory in South Carolina 5, a district where Trump was, again, won by an enormous margin. So if Democrats hadn't nationalized this race with outside money and made it look like Ossoff was basically a carpetbagger coming in with California values, they would have done a lot better here. The third thing that Democrats did wrong is they got Hollywood involved. So Hollywood was deeply involved in this race. It was ridiculous. You had Alyssa Milano tweeting out last night that she needed a hug, to which every male in America said, sure, happy to provide it. And Hollywood got involved by robocalling and sending money and making a big deal out of this race. This is exactly the same mistake, again, that Hillary Clinton made by turning the DNC into a rerun of the Emmys. When you go to Georgia, do you really think a lot of voters in Georgia are deeply concerned about Lena Dunham's take on the Georgia 6th? Do you really think that? Karen Handel slammed Jon Ossoff on this during their debate, and it was telling. It made a difference.
That's why so many of your contributions have come from liberals of California, New York, and Massachusetts. It's why you're supported by Nancy Pelosi. And folks, it matters. It's no wonder that my opponent didn't want to do the Atlanta Press Club debate. It was going to be aired on CNN, where all folks from around the country, all of his liberal supporters were going to see it, and the fake Jon Ossoff was going to collide with the real Jon Ossoff, who is a Nancy Pelosi-backed liberal.
Okay, and that was the entire point. That is why Jon Ossoff lost. Karen Handel, very solid Republican, wins the seat pretty easily. Fourth thing is that, again, Democrats made Trump the focus. And by making Trump the focus, they didn't just go after his policies. If they'd said, listen, Trump's policies are not great, and Trump is kind of scuzzy. Instead of doing that, they did what they've been doing all along. Apocalyptic rhetoric. Trump is the worst person ever. If you voted for Trump, and someone tells you that Trump is the worst person ever, you tend to buck against that. You do. Okay, this is like telling somebody that their girlfriend is kind of a jerk. You tell someone their girlfriend is kind of a jerk, even if they know deep down their girlfriend is kind of a jerk, they're not going to respond well to that. The same thing holds true here. Even people in Georgia 6 who didn't like Trump still like Trump better than Pelosi. And that's the fifth point. Democrats still have that albatross of Nancy Pelosi hanging around their neck. And finally, Ossoff didn't live in the district, and this made a difference. When you combine the fact he was getting all sorts of California money, when you combine that with the Hollywood support, when you combine that with the nationalization of the race and making it about Trump, what you end up with is this image of a guy who's carpetbagging it in from another district. He's a documentary filmmaker with California support, and here he is trying to steal a district in good old Georgia. Again, Karen Handel hammered Ossoff on this during the debate, and it really hurt him.
So, John, I guess what I would like to know is exactly who are you going to vote for in this election?
Is that the question? Okay. Well, I think Secretary Handel is referring to my residence, which is a matter that I've addressed transparently throughout this campaign. I grew up in the 6th Congressional District. I was born and raised in Georgia, unlike Secretary Handel, who was born and raised in Washington, D.C.
Actually, it is of concern to the people of the 6th District that you do not live in our community. And while I was born in Washington, D.C., I didn't get to pick where I was born. But the fact is, I've been in Georgia for almost as long as you've even been alive. You might live just 5 minutes outside of the district, but your values are nearly 3,000 miles away in San Francisco.
Again, her hitting him again about the California values, and that was the telling point. Now, what's funny is the Democrat responses to this. And I want to get to the hot takes from Democrats over this whole thing and why exactly it's indicative of why they're going to continue losing if they keep this up. But before we do that, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at the USCCA. So you wake up at 2 in the morning and somebody's breaking into your house and you have to grab your gun and you have to shoot them. First of all, you don't know, you freeze up because you don't have the training. And then second, even if you do shoot them, you're afraid that the cops are going to come and arrest you because just because you shot someone coming in your house in a state like California doesn't mean that you won't go to jail. That's why you need the USCCA. Not only do they provide training, they also provide you the defense resources you need in case you're in a situation where you do have to shoot someone in self-defense. That's what USCCA is for, to protect you before, during, and after a self-defense incident. Well, right now, when you go to defendmyfamilynow.com, that's defendmyfamilynow.com, you can actually enter for 5 chances to win $1,776 to buy the gun of your dreams and all the ammo you need for an awesome summer at the range and to defend your family. It's a really, really cool thing they're doing right before July 4th, 1776. Get it? You have 5 chances to win $1,776 when you register over at defendmyfamilynow.com to enter for free. And you have 5 chances to enter for free. Defendmyfamilynow.com. Again, go to defendmyfamilynow.com. Not only do you get all the services of USCCA, but you get one of those 5 opportunities to win $1,776 for the gun or ammo of your choice. Super cool. We are so pleased to be working with the USCCA, doing tremendous work on behalf of gun owners across the United States and prospective gun owners who just want to win $1,776 to buy a new gun. Defendmyfamilynow.com. Okay, so the Democrats have reacted to the Ossoff loss in the same way they reacted to the Hillary loss. It is almost impossible to overstate how off the rails Democrats have gone in the aftermath of Hillary losing. They just could not deal with Hillary Clinton losing the election. And so that's why they went into this whole Trump-Russia collusion thing. This is why they went into the idea that the election was stolen from Hillary Clinton. It's why they've castigated the American voter as racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe, doubling down on their own stupidity. They're doing the same thing now. And last night was a good indicator of that. This is the crowd at Ossoff's party, his defeat party. This is what the crowd was chanting over at his defeat party.
Democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
Okay, so they're chanting, this is what democracy looks like, tell me what democracy looks like, as opposed to Karen Handel's crowd, who apparently are fascists of some sort. And whenever Democrats say this is what democracy looks like, what they really mean is, look at all the funny-looking people around here. Look at how we're all diverse and such. Look at, there's so many different colors, and so many different races, and so many different genders, and so many different everything. This is what democracy looks like. The implication, of course, being that people on the other side are homogenous white people, straight white males who hate America and hate people of diverse colors and orientations and such. This is such a mistake by Democrats, but this is what they continue to promulgate, because when you lose, you have two choices. You can either determine why you lost and try to fight against that, or you can blame everybody else on earth. You can blame everyone on the planet except for yourself, and that's what the Democrats have done. They've decided to blame everybody. So here are some of the dumbest Democratic responses to all of this. Number one, in the category of everybody, all the voters are terrible, is Jill Filipovich. She is a feminist writer. She wrote on Twitter, quote, "At what point is this not a failure of Democrats, but toxic, vindictive voters willing to elect hateful bigots?" Okay, I know Karen Handel, actually. I know Karen Handel relatively well, actually. Karen Handel is anything but a bigot. Karen Handel is a charming, genteel woman. She's terrific. I really like Karen Handel personally a lot. And the idea that she is a hateful bigot and that everyone who's voting for Democrats is just wonderful, but everybody voting for Republicans is evil, is really despicable. Jill Filipovich continued, "I know, it's more convenient to blame the party for just not convincing people, but what kind of people vote for candidates like Handel or Trump?" First of all, Karen Handel did not really utilize Trump's support in this election cycle. It was Paul Ryan and the NRCC that came in and saved Karen Handel's bacon. The NRCC put tremendous resources on the ground. They put like $18 million on the ground. I think it was $13 million. $18 million total came in for Karen Handel. They put that kind of money on the ground. That was not Trump. That was Paul Ryan who did that. Handel and Trump could not be more different in terms of temperament, in terms of positions as well. But Jill Filipovich has to blame the crowd. She says at some point we have to be willing to say that, yes, lots of conservative voters are hateful and willing to embrace bigots. Some are even motivated by bigotry. There's no winning if Democrats keep their soul. Maybe we should instead try to convince all of the people of color and women to turn out instead of trying to convince hateful white people, etc. This is what Democrats did in 2016. This was a massive lose, and Democrats are going to continue to maintain this. Sally Kohn always can be counted on for a take so hot that it toasts your Pop-Tarts in the morning. Here is Sally Kohn. She tweeted, quote, "Best thing that could come out of the GA6 results is for Democratic Party to finally give up its self-destructive obsession with centrism." Yes, I'm sure that if you had run a Bernie Sanders wild left Nancy Pelosi candidate in Georgia 6, you would have won. Never mind the fact that Karen Handel won because she was able to link Jon Ossoff with such people. Definitely, Democrats, please run to the hard left. The third thing was the We Need a Hug group. This is Alyssa Milano. She said, "Group hug, get in." Okay, weird. I mean, I'm all right. And then finally, over at the Washington Post, there's a reporter named Paul Kane who theorizes that Ossoff lost because he was too genteel. He says, well, if he'd just been more passionate, that would have been better. Ossoff chose the high priest route instead of the fierce warrior. It was civil disobedience rather than civil unrest, and he still lost by an even wider margin than the almost forgotten Parnell. This would be the candidate in the South Carolina 5th. So the idea is we all have to act like Trump now. We have to yell and scream and be brutal and all this, and then we'll win. No, you won't win then. You will lose then. Trump did not win because he was all of those things. He won because Hillary Clinton was the worst candidate in the history of American politics, and Trump's aggressiveness was an asset, even if his brutality was a drawback. You can be aggressive without being brutal, and Democrats seem to fail to acknowledge all of that. But please, Democrats, keep those hot takes coming. Really appreciate it. Now, I do want to discuss what this means for 2018 and how Republicans have to be a little bit careful in their interpretation of these results. They may be getting over their skis in terms of the triumphalism a little bit early, but for that, you're going to have to go over to dailywire.com right now and become a subscriber. For $8 a month, you can subscribe to dailywire.com. Now, If you want to subscribe and get access to the mailbag, watch the rest of the show live, get Andrew Klavan's show live, get access to his mailbag, we have new shows that are coming. If you want to get that for $8 a month, you have until July 1st to do that, because on July 1st, we are raising our rates. It's not going to change rates for anybody who's currently subscribed. So if you subscribe right now, then you get in under the wire for $8 a month. This is also true for the annual subscribers. If you go and become an annual subscriber right now, not only do you get in under the wire before we raise rates July 1st, but also you get a free signed copy of this here book, Say It So, by me and my dad. It's all about dads and sons and baseball. I had my dad on last Friday. He's a wonderful guy. He's also a terrific writer. And Say It So is the name of the book. You can get a signed copy, signed by me, and you can get all that with an annual subscription. If you just want to listen later, go over to iTunes or SoundCloud. Make sure that you subscribe. I think Google Play has it as well. Make sure that you subscribe, and then you can download the show. We always appreciate your not only listening to the show, but also leaving a review. So if you do that, that also helps let other people know through the iTunes algorithm that we exist. We always appreciate it. We are the largest conservative podcast in the country.